Hello, everyone. Russ of Aquarium Pets here with Invertebrate Dude. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us.
No
Is this
problem. Thanks for having me.
your third time on the show?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's my third. Yeah.
Third or fourth, one of those two.
Yeah.
So, cool.
All right.
It looks like we have a lot of people already in the chat.
Nice.
Frank the Tank, Laura Taylor, RI Naturals, 503, Aunt Sandy Skinks, Shane, and whoa, who else is in there? Random T, Magnificent Animals. If I miss somebody, there's the Beetle guy, Theropod Hunter. If I miss somebody, we'll catch you. There's Dope Critters, Young Lad, JH. Ooh, lots more people coming in. Great. Well, today we are going to talk about two different things. And if you're here, you probably already know what they are. Invertebrate Dude here is a master of many trades when it comes to invertebrates and has quite a bit of experience with both Harvestmen and with Piedish beetles. So the first part of the show, we're going to talk about Harvestmen, and then at about 6, we're going to transition over to Piedish beetles. So my moderators, if you can keep an eye on the clock, and when it is 6 my time, it might be a different time your time, but halfway through the show, after we've been going for half an hour, if you can gently remind me, we're going to switch over to Piedish beetle. So Tristan, if you can tell us, kind of introduce what Harvestmen you're working with to start out with.
Well, I currently have 3 species of Harvestmen. Vonones sei, Sei's ornate Harvestman, and Vonones ornata, just the ornate Harvestman, and Eumesosoma CF roeri, which I've been calling the Black Velvet Harvestman, which those are brand new to culture. Cool. As far as I'm aware, I'm the first to breed them, but they're pretty easy. But yeah, so Vonones are like the most common Harvestmen in culture. They're readily available. Vonones sei is very widespread, often gets mislabeled as Vonones ornata in the hobby, but you could tell them apart because Vonones ornata seems to be restricted to Florida. Could be wrong on that, but the only sightings I've ever seen of true ornata were from Florida. And ornata have 2 pretty noticeable spines on their back that end in very sharp little points, whereas on adults specifically. Vonones sei immatures also have spikes, but they lose those spikes when they mature, and instead they have just, I think, 2 to 4 very short tubercles. So just tiny little bumps, but they're not spikes. So that's how you tell the 2 species apart.
Cool.
But yeah, so and then
and the Black Velvet Harvestman. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
So those are fairly widespread across the southern U.S. Mine come from Oklahoma. They seem to be more seasonal than Vonones. Some Vonones sei strains do require like diapauses and stuff in order to, continuously breed yearly, usually more northern strains. Southern strains don't. Eumesosoma, even the southern ones, seem to require a distinction between the warmer months and the cooler months, and they don't start laying eggs until the temperature drops to like high 60s to mid 60s. But once they do, they lay lots of eggs. Vonones lay eggs usually on top of the substrate, or under objects and stuff. They're usually pretty visible. Eumesosoma lay eggs in big clumps underground.
Interesting.
Yeah, a dozen eggs per clump, and they're really prolific too. So I've been getting lots of hatchlings from those. Cool. But yeah, so I've been keeping them. Room temperature during the fall here is like mid 60s, especially if I put them on the ground, where it's cooler. So that's been enough to get them to start laying eggs. The eggs start hatching. They grow fine. They've been growing really fast at these temperatures too. Some of my hatchlings are already half grown. So
yeah, they seem to grow lightning fast. That's something I like about Harvestmen.
Yeah, they grow really fast. Yeah. So yeah.
Interesting. So I was going to ask you about this. My Vonones sei are they reproduced a lot into maybe the fall,
Hmm.
and then they kind of slow down.
Yeah.
Is that normal in your observation, or is it something that I'm doing differently? Or
That's probably normal, especially if they don't come from like a very far southern locale. They probably do just naturally slow down during fall and winter, and then start breeding more during the warmer months. Uh,
right.
yeah, strains from like pretty far north, like North Carolina, that kind of line, like the northernmost extent of their range. I think they can be found in Ohio. Actually, I think they range pretty far north. Um, those would probably need like a pretty significant, actual diapause. You have to cool them down to 60s, 50s in order to get them to breed the next year, I would assume. But yeah, yours, probably just slow down a little bit during the cooler months and then breed faster in the warmer months. So that sounds normal to me.
Okay, cool.
Hmm.
Because yeah, they were just almost constantly producing young for a while, and then
Hmm.
I was like, am I doing something weird?
Yeah.
They just kind of slowed down.
Yeah.
And I see there are still young ones, but they're older young ones that probably
Yeah.
hatched
Hmm.
in the fall and
Yeah.
just have grown up and almost finished growing up.
Yeah.
So with the black velvet ones,
Hmm.
are they just as communal as Bononis?
They seem to be. They seem to be pretty communal. I think larger immatures snack on the new hatchlings, a little bit more than you'd see in Vanonis,
Mhm.
but not to a very detrimental degree. I got lots of mixed sizes in my colony that seem to do pretty well together.
Mhm.
And oddly, they seem to eat less springtails and stuff than Vanonis do. They
Hmm.
seem to be more on they snack on the fruit more, the dog food, cat food I give them, and they probably do eat some of the springtails, but not as much as Vanonis. Vanonis, I dump in hundreds of springtails into my colony, and they'll all be gone the next like couple days.
Wow.
They're voracious. The Mesosoma not as voracious, but just as fast growing though. So that's nice.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed that with mine. I have a ton of springtails in at least one of the. I have two enclosures because I split the culture. Got kind of,
Hmm.
it's pretty
Yeah.
big, so I figured I'd split it. And in one of the cultures, especially, there are tons of springtails all the time. But I do regularly add, or at least pretty frequently add,
Hmm.
flightless fruit flies. And do you think that's why?
Yeah, they might be preferring the fruit flies to the springtails, or if you give them multiple food sources, they're gonna eat less of each one.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but yeah, I do in all my Harvestmen colonies. I do also throw in Comstodes shortsea and Nocticola species of Malaysia, two microroach species, the two smallest roaches in the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
And they do seem to eat the hatchling nymphs of those as well, because
Okay.
I've noticed I have breeding populations in their enclosures, but Compsodies usually absolutely explode no matter what you put them in with, but they don't with the Vanones. And I see a lot of larger individuals, but once hatchlings come out, it's like you see a few hatchling roaches here and there, but not as much as you'd see in a colony where they're not being eaten. So
Okay.
they
Kind of
definitely seem to be good food for them too.
like isopods with a lizard or something like that.
Hmm.
You see
Yeah,
them in there, but
exactly.
you know they're
Yeah.
going to get them off.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool because then you know that you're not going to get overloaded with the roaches, but you also know that you're
Hmm.
providing regular snacks.
Exactly. And they also kind of work as a cleanup crew
Mhm.
too. To be honest, they're detritivores that eat, leftover food that you might throw in for the harvestmen that they don't eat, and help keep things clean too.
Perfect.
Yeah. So that's nice.
So, Magnificent Animals wanted to know if the Harvestman, the Black Velvet Harvestman husbandry was different or similar
Yeah.
to Benoni's.
It's been very similar. At first, I set them up on, like, usually my harvestmen, I just set them up on coconut fiber or potting soil, simple organic based mixes. They're not going to be eating it. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it retains moisture. But I initially was under the impression that the Eumesosoma would want a more like clay based substrate, or at least some sand mixed in. So I gave them a mix of coconut fiber and clay, and they laid in that. But then I later moved them to an enclosure with just coconut fiber, and they've also been laying in that, so they don't seem to care.
Doesn't seem to
And
matter.
Yeah, and in terms of just the general setup, the general feeding, etc., yeah, I keep them exactly the same as I keep my Venonians. So,
Okay.
yeah,
And you
they're
just
very
mentioned
easy.
you notice that they are a little bit more on the detritivorous side. They tend to
Hmm.
be more of the dog food, cat food, fish food,
Exactly.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Tennyson has a question about European harvestmen. They've been bred. That's
Which
the Falangio,
species?
right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Those are just like the standard ones that
Yeah.
common cosmopolitan backyard species. Uh, I feel like someone probably has once or twice. I'm sure lab studies have been done on rearing them, but in terms of like the mainstream pet hobby, they're not very common. I think because those tend to be. I've kept those types of harvestmen before. They tend to be a little bit more cannibalistic, need a little bit more space. At least when it comes to the younger in the stars. They're also very seasonal too
Okay.
in their breeding. I
Mhm.
think they lay in the fall, and they're also very short-lived as adults. The adults lay eggs, breed, and die in the fall.
Okay.
Where and then the rest of the year they grow up, and then by fall they're adults. They breed, they mate, they die. Whereas like the Umesosoma I have, they are seasonal breeders, but the adults, all my adults are still alive well into the winter. So show no signs of slowing down. I think they're still laying eggs even. So
Okay.
so they're much more long lived. But I think those European harvestmen are much shorter lived, bit more finicky, certainly a lot more fragile. Drop their legs at the slightest stress as well. So, which, armored harvestmen and Umesosoma don't really seem to drop their legs much. So, yeah, that's why they're not very popular in the hobby, I'm pretty sure. But,
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, but I feel like they'd be pretty simple to breed. Just, maybe not worth the effort as some other harvestmen would be.
That totally makes sense. And that's the species Phalangium opilio. I looked it up.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
That's the ones those are the ones for everybody at home. They were introduced from Europe and they're all over the place. At least they used to be. I don't see as many of them as I used to. I might see a couple a year, but I used to see tons when I was a kid.
Really? Yeah,
Not
that's
as
weird. I don't know if I've seen that exact species, but I'm pretty sure the species that I've seen here in Idaho was a Phalangium species. Might have been Opilio. Probably was. And now that I think about it, few years ago I saw them pretty often, but I haven't seen any in years. So that is kind of weird.
I wonder what's going on there. So Alan was talking about wondering about the springtails with
Mm-hmm.
if both Say and Ornatho were eating a lot of them because the Cynotoides don't seem to eat much of them. Have you ever kept that species, the Cynotoides?
I have not, but I will be soon, hopefully. Those though, as far as I'm aware, like I have a close friend who breeds them, and he has noticed that they don't eat much springtails compared to they're more detritivore than Vanones are.
Okay, so noticing the same thing that
Yes, that
Alan.
Alan. Yeah, they don't eat that many springtails compared to Sei and Ornata. And it's like Sei eat even less springtails than Ornata do in my experience.
Okay.
They're more detritivore. They're more generalistic in their feeding habits, whereas Ornata pretty almost exclusively feed on the live prey in my experience. They'll nibble on the apples and stuff, but yeah, they really prefer the live prey. True or not. Mm-hmm.
You were also saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you and I had a conversation about the fact that Sei are a little bit better about leaving their maturing young alone, and
Mm-hmm.
Ornatha will tend to demonstrate aggression towards them.
Yeah, that is true. That plays into the dietary differences between them as well, because they are more generalistic. They're not as predatory. They're more chill. Basically, they don't need live prey as badly as Ornata do. And if Ornata run out of live prey or are a little crowded, they start cannibalizing their babies a lot quicker. So that's just their preference.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Frank is wondering if harvestmen are very sensitive to mold blooms.
None of the species I kept have been. I don't really. I mean, I don't really get that much mold in my enclosures. I have so many springtails. I got those micro roaches in with them that also eat food before it gets moldy, and Compsodies even eat mold, I'm pretty sure. And also Orobated mites, which again keep down mold growth. So I don't really get big mold blooms, but sometimes the food will get, covered in mold. Sometimes little patches of substrate will get infected with, mushroom mycelium or random molds, and it doesn't seem to bother them much. If the entire substrate was like one moldy mat, though, then that would probably be bad.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but
you might even get some issues with it using up too much oxygen at that point.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay. Molly Content, not sure how that goes, wants to know which species of Vonones would be better for a beginner.
I think Seiyu is definitely better for the beginner, just because they're less likely to eat their own young. They're more generalistic in their diet, and they're also more widely available in the hobby, as far as I'm aware. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So Tennyson wants to know, setting up for black velvets, how much humidity do you set them up with? Pretty
high. I don't have like a hydrometer or anything, so I don't actually know how the exact percentages of the humidity, but I keep them pretty moist. They seem to like it pretty humid.
Okay.
They can be found in drier savanna habitats as well. Mine came from a more forested area, so they can probably take it a bit drier. But I would assume that in the wild, they're taking advantage of humid microclimates where they can. So, mine seem to do well at high humidity, so I keep them pretty humid.
Cool.
But
so, comment from Alan. Hopes this gets people to start showing interest in mini harvestmen like Bishopella and Stignoma. I haven't seen those. I'm interested in finding out more about it, though.
Yeah, those are like, imagine Vonones, but with no patterning, just red, and like less than half the size.
Oh, really?
They're really cute. Yeah, really cute. Pretty communal. I don't have them, but Alan breeds them. One of my other friends breeds them. They're pretty easy. And those especially seem to like their springtails as well.
Wow, that's really cool. The idea of patternless ones. I've seen. I know that some of the populations from, I think it's like Oklahoma and Kansas and stuff, of Vonones will show up patternless.
Yeah, some Vonones say from there, like just bright orange, patternless. I think in Texas too, they have those patternless ones as well. Yeah, I would love to work with those at some point. Those are really nice.
Yeah, and these mini ones sound really cool. And
yeah, they really are.
Could be a nice option for people who want to do like the micro vivariums.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those would do well in that kind of setup. So, yeah. We need more harvestman love in general. We have so many species here in the U.S. So many, and a lot of unique ones. And just they don't get the attention they deserve, in my opinion, in the hobby. So I hope to see more species enter culture as time goes on.
Yeah, I've seen some really fantastic species. There's some really brightly patterned ones from southern U.S. like Arizona and Texas.
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous ones.
Yeah, they have some really nice ones.
Those. So Shane Coughlin says there's a micro species, Cato agilis.
Those Cato are so weird. They look, if you look up images of them, their eyes are like really big and bulbous and raised above their, not heads, their
pronotum or
the cephalothorax, I guess.
Yeah.
They look like octopuses.
Really?
They do. Just to me, that's what, as soon as I see one, I'm like, that's an octopus. I'm pretty sure Cato is the species I'm thinking of that they look like that.
I gotta see this.
I really hope I got that genus. I'm pretty sure it's Cato.
Oh, yep. I'm looking it up and it looks crazy. Octopus, I totally see it. Yep.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can show it on the screen. This is from iNaturalist. I'm going to try to share it on the screen. I don't know if it's going to work out or not. No, that kind of works.
That looks good, yeah.
The focus is not awesome, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
Eyes. Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's so weird. The eyes are so big, so I wonder if that has something to do with like the type of prey they go after. Maybe they're like exclusively carnivorous. They need better vision to see. I don't know. But I don't know the explanation for those huge eyes, but they look really cute. So
they do.
Yeah. It'd be cool to see those.
Like
in the hobby.
Octopus.
Yeah.
And somebody's mentioning, who is it? Was mentioning another species. All right, naturalist. Leobunum. These remind me a little bit more of the ones, they're a little bit more like the Phalangium, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Look, here's an example.
Yeah. Those might actually have been what I saw here in Idaho.
Could be.
Yeah.
Apparently, RI
Maybe.
Naturalist finds a lot of them.
Yeah.
In that area.
Yeah.
Okay, magnificent animals. Do you give your Benoni sphagnum moss to drink from?
Nah. I just miss their enclosure every few days, and that seems to do it. That plus the high humidity, plus probably the, little bit of moisture they get from the prey that they eat, the fruit I give them. Yeah, I don't give them like a designated drinking spot with moss or anything. So.
Yeah, I kind of keep a moisture gradient in the enclosure. I have a mossy area, but I don't I didn't specifically provide it as a place to drink from. I'm just like, oh, here's kind of a moisture area for the springtails, and that's
yeah.
Seen those really cool heavily armored harvestmen? I know I've seen some of those.
Yes, there's a really cool giant armored harvestman from the Chile. I think it's Chile. Sadocus. Actually, I think they're widespread across several South American countries. But Sadocus, Sadocus. They
Ocus.
Yeah, Sadocus.
Sadocus asperatus.
Yeah,
Holy
I'm
cow.
not sure. There's multiple different species, and they all look insane. They're very heavily armored. They're huge, like palm-sized.
Here's an example of a couple of Sadocus on someone's hand. These may not be fully grown, or they may be a species that's smaller, but they totally look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They look really neat.
Those are crazy.
Yeah, I've seen a species on Google Images that was bigger than that. Some Sadocus get huge. So, yeah, I've seen them. I know people who have tried to import them. Unfortunately, during the summer months, and they did not survive being shipped during the summer. We might see them in the U.S. though at some point this coming year, which would be really cool.
That would be
really cool. Yeah.
So Molly content and said that's how it's actually said. So that's cool. So wondering where to get Benoni sei.
Well, I don't have any available right now. Roach Crossing might have them available, but Bug in Cyberspace sometimes has them in stock. Honestly, your best bet would probably be going on various Facebook groups and, or forums, asking around. They pop up for sale every now and then. You'll probably get them cheaper through like a Facebook group or even a forum rather than buying from a website directly. But they pop up every now and then. Usually most people aren't captive breeding them. Roach Crossing does. I do, but in terms of what you're generally going to find on the market, it's mostly wild caught individuals. And so you're going to see them pop up more during like spring, summer, when people are actually collecting them.
Yeah. I'll probably be offering them eventually because mine are breeding. So
yeah, there you go. Contact us.
I don't have a ton of them, enough to start selling them yet, but I do have 2 enclosures with a decent population of adults. And
get on his waiting list, people.
Yeah, that might be the way to do it. But those are, I know I've seen them in, like you said, you got them sometimes. Roach Crossing is where I got mine, and Peter at Bugs in Cyberspace sometimes has them.
Yeah.
And I've seen them at all of those places.
Yeah.
So, pretty much. Let's see. There was a comment I missed somewhere. Random T was saying Clint's Reptiles has one on video from his last trip. Yes.
Yeah.
That species actually, or the video or footage of that individual that he found in Peru, in the Peruvian Amazon, showed up in the video we did together.
Yeah.
We started talking about Harvestmen, and he showed that one first, and then he showed the Benoni sei that I brought down to his place. So
which that I don't think was a Sadocus species that he found in Peru, but whatever it was, I think it was still in Lania Torres, the group of armored harvestmen, and whatever it was, really pretty, really big. So yeah, those are really cool. Yeah,
very, very cool.
So, but yeah.
All right. Well, we're we're getting close to the time when we're going to turn over to talk about Piedish beetles. Do you have any harvestmen you want to share with us?
Sure. Let's see. I'll show off the black velvets because those are probably more in demand to see right now. Most people know what the Venonis look like. Let me just find an adult here. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to the bug cam in just a second, everybody, so that we can see what we've got here. Here we go, bug cam.
Okay.
We can see one.
There
There it goes.
you go.
Cool.
Yeah, so that is. Let me see if I shine this light on it. Is that any better, or is that blinding?
It was blinding for a second. Now I think it's not so bad.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, would you say that these are kind of a smoother bodied?
They are very smooth bodied, kind of velvety looking, and it's unfortunately it's not capturing on the camera that well, but their legs have like gold flecking on them, which is really neat. But yeah, it's kind of hard to capture on my phone.
Yeah, sometimes that can be tricky. Do you know if these fluoresce like the Venonis do in blacklight?
I have not tested it. On Venonis, I'm pretty sure it's like the little markings that glow, right?
Yes.
And these don't have markings, so I would assume they probably don't glow. But I don't know. I haven't tested it, so someone else is gonna have to try that.
Cool.
Because
it'd be interesting. Maybe the little flecks on their legs glow or something. Who knows?
Maybe that could be possible. I can see that happening. But yeah, those would be pretty cool. But yeah, so these have more like a rotund body than Venonis do. Venonis are more like box shaped. But surprisingly, these are pretty like hard shelled still. Like, they're not squishy. They look squishy, but they're not squishy.
They're not squishy. There's kind of a matte black, but
exactly
armored. That's cool.
Yeah.
How many would you say you have of those? Just ballpark figure.
Let's see. Well, I started with 2 adult pairs. Here, I'll try to show off of Venonis as well. I started off with 2 adult pairs, but now I've got several dozen mixed sizes, and both adult pairs are still alive too. So, yeah. So those have been pretty good breeders, and I expect to have lots. Okay, so there's a Venonis ornata, not the biggest ornata I've seen, but one of my captive bred adults. And yes, they do really use their antenna, their forelegs, like a pair of antenna. It's one of the interesting things about Harvestmen.
Yeah. So you were saying that's kind of a smaller Venonis, but are the black velvets in general larger than adult Venonis?
They do seem to be a little bit more chunky than Venonis for sure. Same, they are a little larger. Not by that much, but yeah, this is kind of a puny Venonis. This is the first one I saw, but yeah, it's kind of a small boy. Might actually be a male or something. That is also one thing that's cool about the Eumesosoma. They're actually pretty sexually dimorphic. The males have much smaller bodies than the females. Venonis, I've not really noticed much sexual dimorphism between them. They're very... I literally can't tell males from females in Venonis, but I can in Eumesosoma.
Just because of the body size in relation to their legs, or just the absolute body size?
Just the overall body size and the leg proportions. I've noticed no difference between male female Venonis, but yeah, in Eumesosoma, it's very obvious. Yeah, so this one's a female. My males have evaded me, but they're in their enclosure somewhere. But yeah, they didn't want to come out to be on the live stream.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, Tennyson's going to try to collect some Euribunis. That's some of those fantastically colored species in Arizona, from what I recall.
Yeah, Euribunis. That'd be really cool. I really hope you're successful. Conditions they might like. So I would probably keep them like you would Eumesosoma or Venonis. Maybe go again, maybe just to be on the safe side, go with a clay or sand mixed with coconut fiber or something similar.
Mhm.
And you probably want an actual like 50-50 humidity gradient with those, with any of the desert species.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my mods, thank you, moderators, are letting me know it's about time to switch over to Piedish beetles.
Alrighty. Here, I'll just turn that off for now.
Okay. And thank you for sharing the Harvestmen with us. That was very cool.
Yeah.
I learned some cool things about Harvestmen that I didn't know. So, especially about some of the really crazy species there are.
Mm-hmm. There's so many. It's such a diverse group. Very underrated.
All right. So for this one, we had some specific questions about Piedish beetles from Patreon from Alex. Alex was actually the one who requested, when Alex joined Patreon, requested some information on Piedish beetles and Harvestmen. So the first question about Piedish beetles that Alex had, how do you keep the adults? Okay, I should preface this that Alex has already done some research on Piedish beetles, read your care sheet that you put together, and in your care sheet you mentioned how humidity can be tricky, that high humidity can kill them off. And so Alex was wondering, how do you keep the adults from dying when you have to deal with things like high humidity or temperature fluctuations?
Well, in general, even in a fairly humid enclosure, if your ventilation is very high, both cross and lid ventilation, it's not that much of an issue for them. So Embaphium muricatum, which is like the OG Piedish beetles, those are the ones that are most sensitive to humidity fluctuations. So those keep them very well ventilated. Keep only a quarter to a third of the substrate humid, the rest bone dry, and they should be fine, even in the summer. I've not had much issue with that. And then some of the other, like Embaphium contusum, Embaphium glabrum, those seem to be even less picky as adults about the humidity. So,
Okay.
Fairly easy. Just, ventilation is key, especially with, desert darkling beetles. So, yeah.
Very cool. So we had some follow-up questions here. One, Theropod Hunter was wondering if Piedish beetles are a type of darkling.
Yes, they are. They are a type of darkling beetle. The family Tenebrionidae is all darkling beetles. So, Piedish beetles, headstand beetles, which people call aloides, blue death feigning beetles, dark, superworms, mealworms. These are all in the same family of Tenebrionidae, but different subfamilies.
Beetles
yes.
Yes.
They're one of the largest beetle families out there. Very diverse. So, yeah.
So the Bug's Life chose me. I guess we kind of already answered this because blue death feigning beetles require it to be drier than Piedish beetles do in general. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Piedish beetles, especially their larvae, like it pretty humid compared to a lot of other darklings. Still, I would give blue death feigning beetles a good amount of ventilation, dry substrate to retreat to. But Piedish beetles and most desert darklings that I've kept in my experience do like it at the most a 50-50 humidity gradient. But most prefer like only a third to a quarter of the substrate being kept humid, the rest bone dry, well ventilated. You find these in very dry xeric habitats in the wild that you're not gonna, it rains occasionally, but not that much. There's some humid microclimates, but usually underground. So, they like it pretty dry.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, Molly content, because they all live together, all the desert darkling beetles. Well, go ahead.
Adults can. Adults are all fine together, most of them. Because, like I said, even with higher, like blue death feigning beetles, the adults can be kept completely bone dry if you wanted to. The humidity for them is really only for breeding. Like, I literally have some blue death feigning beetles that I received that potentially may have had a fungal infection. And they were given to me with that warning. So I've had them in quarantine in a well-ventilated enclosure with absolutely no water just dried paper towel for a month now, and they're perfectly fine. So
they're pretty
yeah,
resistant.
so most desert darkling beetles as adults can be kept together just fine. Keep a quarter to a third of the humid substrate humid, the rest bone dry, well ventilated. They all pretty much have the same diet, same care needs. Give them hides and stuff. Larvae of different darkling beetles hate each other. They all pretty much have the same ecological niche. They're detritivores / slightly carnivores. So they eat each other. Like as bolus larvae, death feigning beetle larvae just eat each other of the same species. They don't even like, being that crowded. They a lot of protein, but aloides and Piedish beetles and stuff usually don't eat larvae of their own species unless starved, but they will readily eat, hunt down, and kill larvae of different species that are competing with them, because each species wants to be the one that has the most larvae make it to adulthood. And when they all have basically the same niche, basically the same care, they start eating each other.
They're competing, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, if you keep multiple species together with the intention of breeding them, you're most likely going to have a vast majority of the larvae that survive to adulthood being of one species.
Whatever happens to be more aggressive.
Exactly. Whatever is more aggressive, whatever hatches out first, those are going to be the dominant ones, and going to get very little larvae surviving of the other species. That's been my experience, at least.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, would you recommend keeping other species besides beetles with Piedish?
You could keep them with, you could probably keep them with scorpions. They're not as tough shelled as death feigning beetles. So, like, if the scorpion stung them and actually got, like, in between their body segments, might kill them. But yeah, you could keep them with dry hardy isopods. Even possibly some dry hardy species of roaches as well, like Aranabaga, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's possibilities as long as they share the same general humidity needs and aren't actively gonna eat each other. They should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I've experimented with my one lone Piedish beetle in a couple of different situations. I've actually kept it with Cubaris morina in an enclosure where there's a strong humidity gradient, and it seems to do fine. And it's been in there for like over a year, and it's doing well. So as long as I wouldn't do that if it were just uniformly moist in there. But
but if there's a gradient, it should be fine. Yeah, so even like keeping it with Spanish Porcelio species, some of the Armadillidium, things that isopods that people usually keep with a pretty strong humidity gradient, they probably do fine with those as well.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. There were some more comments here. So how many species of Piedish beetles do you work with?
Currently 3. So I have Embathium muricatum, which are the most Piedishy pie beetles, the ones with the most exaggerated Piedish shape. I have Embathium contusum to be exact. There's I think a couple subspecies, but I have the namesake subspecies. Those little less. Their pronotums are kind of Piedish shaped. The elytra not so much, but those are a lot more prolific and a lot hardier than muricatum. And then I have new to culture Embathium glabrum, smooth Piedish beetles. Those are like somewhere in between contusum and muricatum in terms of the body morphology. They're pretty Piedish shaped, especially the pronotums, and those are very smooth and kind of glossy looking too. So yeah, I have 3 species. They've all been pretty much equally, the same care. It's just I'd say contusum and glabrum are very prolific, whereas muricatum not as prolific. Glabrum's a little bit more picky when it comes to pupation. I've had more die-offs, but contusum and muricatum very high survival rates in comparison. So, each species has its pros and cons, but overall they're very similar in care and fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I believe the one that I have, because I asked you about this, I think you said it is muricatum because it's very, very dishy, pie dishy.
Yeah. Cool. Yes, yours is muricatum. Yeah.
Okay. So Theropod Hunter is wondering if the Battle Royale competition also applies to fruit beetle larvae. I've never worked with fruit beetle larvae, so I don't know.
Me neither. I mean, the only fruit beetle larvae I'm working with are Goliathus, and I mean those actually can be kept communally in a large enough enclosure. So, but that's with their own species. I would assume with other species, again, there would be kind of that competition of different species that have the same exact ecological niche. Their larvae might cannibalize each other. So, I would probably not house multiple species of fruit beetles with each other as larvae.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so Molly content again. Good enclosure for rubber ducky ice pods other than a plastic bin.
A glass tank would work if you maybe covered part of the lid with plexiglass so that there's not so much humidity being lost
Right.
from the, I mean, plastic bins really aren't the best, but yeah, literally any enclosure would work as long as you accommodate the ventilation and humidity needs, really.
Yeah, I keep my main colony in a tarantula cribs enclosure. It has some top and some side ventilation, but it's not excessive, so it works pretty well.
Yeah.
I guess it's an acrylic enclosure, almost a plastic bin. It just looks nicer than
than a shoebox, a Dollar Tree shoebox.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So Magnificent Animals is asking about this. And I think Magnificent Animals may be the same as Alex from Patreon. We're going to ask this question from Patreon. So let's address it either way. How do you keep a sand and cocoa fiber mixture moist? It seems like it would get caked. Yes. Have you had that issue?
Sand does get caked when it gets wet, which can be pretty annoying. So if you want to avoid that, you just mix in as much coconut fiber as it takes to kind of stop that from happening. Like a 50-50 mix, and it stops caking as much. Some darklings, Piedish beetles not included, but some darklings are samophiles and need to be kept on pure sand. They don't like anything organic mixed in with it. And those types of dune specialists, you just gotta kind of, deal with the fact that the moist substrate is always going to be pretty caked. Thankfully, those types of species usually don't like to be in the humid substrate. So you just keep a quarter of the substrate humid. The larva will usually straddle the line in between the humid and the dry substrate. And when they go to pupate, they might go into the humid substrate. But in that case, the caking texture is actually a good thing because it retains the stability of their pupal cells and prevents them from collapsing. Because darkling beetles, unlike scarabs, do not construct thick pupal cell walls with their own spit and substrate. They literally just scratch out a chamber in the dirt, and that's it. If you press down on the dirt, the cell will collapse. Shaking the enclosure too hard, the cell can collapse. There's nothing really protecting them. So a stable substrate is important for pupation of darklings. So
makes sense. Yeah. So for some of the samophiles, like maybe Adrodes, kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, 503. We need another episode all about desert beetles. Yeah. I'm thinking of doing some more videos about. I'm planning on working on some more desert beetle content. So.
Yeah. Darklings are kind of a big part of what I keep. I've worked with with about 80 species of darklings total.
Wow.
And bred successfully about half of that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, this is a lot.
I noticed on your Instagram, I think it was today, you had those mini woolly darklings. I don't remember what species that was.
Yeah, Aloides littoralis.
Okay, littoralis. So they're like, doesn't that mean like they're shore beetles or something? Doesn't that mean
I think they originally were thought to be a shoreline endemic species, but there's been records recently of them further inland in California, so it's not that. But yeah, it is a Californian endemic, typically found in sandy areas near the shore, but can be found further inland, even in some mountainous areas too. But
cool.
Yeah, those are really neat. Really about like a centimeter long, so pretty small for Aloides. but really cute, really completely covered in hair all over. They're really adorable. So
I have decided that I really like a lot of the really small darkling beetles. They're fun.
yeah, they are. They are. Size is not important for me. I keep a lot of micro inverts. So yeah, I like the smaller species. They're cute, take up less space, and much easier to pupate communally too. So
That's a cool one. I want to breed some of the smaller ones. Of course, I've bred, mealworms all the time. But,
yeah.
And some other, superworms too. I'm constantly breeding superworms, but and I've bred blue death fanning beetles, but I haven't really branched out into breeding a whole lot of other beetles. So it would be fun to kind of play with some of that, especially some of these smaller beetles that they have a ton of, I don't know, stage presence isn't really the right word, but just seeing the little ones do their thing is fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of charisma, very personable beetles.
Yeah.
Very active. So yeah, they're fun to watch.
That too. So magnificent animals. If you have a large enclosure, can the Piedish larvae pupate within the enclosure, or should you remove them?
Depends how large the enclosure is and how many larvae there are. If you like mine, I keep in gallon, shoebox containers, food storage containers. Literally just a gallon, and I have a lot of adults, and they produce dozens and dozens of larvae. There's not enough room in there for them to pupate communally safely because they'll make pupal cells in the moist substrate, but then other larvae will come in and collapse those cells with their digging activities, eat pupa. That's a big thing with darkling beetles. They'll eat their own pupa quite often if they find them. So if it's a big enough enclosure, like say a 10-gallon tank, that
They could be okay.
Several inches of substrate, a vertical humidity gradient with like the lower few inches kept humid, the top few inches kept dry. If you do that approach, you can pupate them communally, no problem. You should get, a decent amount of adults coming out. But if not, I isolate mature larvae in like 1 ounce deli cups like this, filled with a bit of compacted substrate, and I just let them pupate isolated because it's easier for me to keep track of them that way. But,
okay. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, thank you, Dan, for the super chat. Glad you were able to catch this live. I really appreciate your support. Fantastic to see you here. All right. So let's see. Molly content. Would the 8-inch round fossorial tarantula curb tank work for rubber duckies? It could, but I would say make sure that you don't get the substrate too close to any of the ventilation holes, because I'm trying to remember, but it seems like the fossorial enclosure, the vent holes are closer. They're higher up, I think, if I remember correctly. As long as you don't get them too close to that, it should work fine.
Don't want those duckies escaping.
No, and they will get out of vent holes. The baby ones can climb up, and a lot of people think, well, isopods can't climb really smooth surfaces, and they can't. But they can climb dirty smooth surfaces, which are not smooth anymore. They look smooth to us, but they're not smooth to the isopods. So.
And 10-gallon just Piedish beetles, you should get at least a breedable amount of adults popping up with each generation to keep the colony going.
Keep it going.
But
even if a few of them get disturbed, overall keeps them going.
Exactly. Yeah.
So 503, what temperature do you keep the pupae at for the Piedish beetles?
Room temperature. They don't, unlike death fanning beetles, most desert darklings do not require a temperature raise to pupate. These are just keep 70, 72 degrees. They don't mind. So pretty easy.
They don't really need a pupal cue other than having proper substrate.
Exactly. Yeah. Just literally when they're the proper size, they just try to find a place to pupate immediately.
Very cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, magnificent animals, thank you so much for the super chat. Glad you're appreciating this stream and that it's helping with your research. And and thanks again to Tristan for coming. A wealth of information.
No problem.
Stuff.
Yeah. Always happy to share.
Yep. And just a reminder for those of you who may not have noticed, down at the bottom of the the screen, you can see that this is Tristan's website, invertebratedude.com, where you can find, it used to be invertebratedude.blogspot.com, but now you can just go here, and there's all kinds of information. How would you characterize your website? Like, what can people find on your website?
It's first and foremost a blog showcasing my experiences with the invertebrates I keep. I post a lot. All my pictures get posted there, so a lot of pictures of the species I keep, which are often rare or obscure. So I share as much information as I possibly can to try to serve as a resource of information for hobbyists to come and visit. I have care sheets, I have a sale page, I have a multitude of other random pages as well, like working on a key for identifying pure hissing roaches in the hobby, stuff like that. But yeah, I try to be mainly just try to be a good resource of information for those that are keeping, invertebrates. And yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually how I first discovered you, was when I was discovering your website. I don't know if it was that or if it was through Arachnoboards when you were a Hisser Dude, right?
Yeah.
It was one of those two. But at any rate, I found that both your posts on Arachnoboards and your blog very good sources of information way back in the day, long before we'd ever spoken. Like you did, so.
Oh, well, that's good. Glad.
So we are getting down to, we have fewer than 10 minutes left. That's crazy. That went fast.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Should we pull out some more bugs?
Sure thing. Let's get some Piedish beetles. It's where did I put the, here. Okay, so put that on the bug cam. And there's one on the floor.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm adding the bug cam to the stream and putting it in solo layout so we can check it out. So are these Muricatum?
Okay, let me get the light here. Yes, these are Ambathium muricatum Piedish beetles. So they have a very exaggerated Piedish shape. Let's see if I can get that on camera. So you can see even the elytra are kind of concave. Let's see if I can, like a Piedish, basically.
Yeah, when you put your finger in there, you can really see it.
Yeah, exactly. So these are Muricatum, and let me show off some Contusum as well. Those, only the pronotums are really Piedish shaped, but they're still kind of cool in their morphology. Male's got a little bit of a elytral extension as well. Like a little, I think it's technically called a muckrow.
Oh yeah, the muckrow, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the LODs have that.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not focusing super well right now.
Focus is kind of messed up, but it's...
Yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, that's better. Yeah, you can see the muckrow, and you can see when it holds still for a second, you can see the pronotum, the edge of the pronotum.
Exactly, yeah. These are pretty hyper beetles. They run around a lot, which makes them very fun to watch, though.
Right.
They
are fun little critters.
But yeah, so there's a couple more Contusum.
So while we're checking these out, 503 wants to know what got you into inverts.
Well, I've just been interested in invertebrates my whole life, even as a little kid. So always going outside, catching them, looking at them. Audubon Field Guide was like my favorite book as a kid for insects. Insects and herps I was always very interested in, and that eventually grew into me keeping invertebrates. And started with a couple pet roaches, then started collecting isopods outside, beetles, got pretty heavy into beetles, especially here in Idaho, because darkling beetles are very diverse here. So yeah, I just slowly grew and grew from there, and now I have 150 species of invertebrates. And That number fluctuates up and down a bit, but it is very definitely on the rise every month. Yeah, so it's like, oh boy, it's a bit of an addiction at this point, but
that's cool.
Yeah.
So, Champ Barra wanted to know if there's a way to tell the sexes apart with Piedish beetles.
Okay, so Ambaphium contusum and glabrum are pretty easy. So like this one right here, that's a male, and this one is a female. And you can tell because females are a bit more broader and they don't have the elytral extension that male contusum do. Glabrum males also don't have an elytral extension, but they're much skinnier than the females.
Okay.
And Ambaphium muricatum, I have a much more difficult time sexing because they're very variable in size, and it doesn't seem to be linked with sex.
Okay.
So I've not really found a good reliable feature to sex Ambaphium muricatum. I can make guesses, like this one's very small and very skinny, it's probably a male. This one's very big and very broad, probably a female, but it's much more iffy because they're just so variable compared to the other Ambaphium species.
That makes sense.
But yeah.
So Shane wanted to know if there's a reason or advantage for the Piedish shape. It must have evolved for some reason. Do we know what it is, or is there speculation about it?
There's some darklings that have like ridges and sort of a Piedish shape, sometimes ridges going down the elytra that all funnel towards the head. And you can see in Ambaphium muricatum, it's pretty obvious. But in some of these African species, it's been documented that they will go out in the dawn and just stand still and have morning dew condensation condense on their bodies, and they stand kind of with their heads pointed towards the ground and their butts pointed in the air, and if the water condenses on them and drops down, funnels to their heads, and that's how they get their water.
Okay. Yeah.
And so there might be, it's not been documented in Ambaphium if that's what the body shape is for, but that might be what it's for. That's my personal theory as to,
Okay.
the most reasonable cause for their body shape, because it certainly doesn't really offer defense in any way.
Yeah.
Might make it a little weird for things to try to stuff them in their mouth, but I don't know. I think probably somehow it's linked to hydration, but I could be wrong.
That makes sense. I do remember hearing that about the species. I think there's a species besides the African ones, I think there might be an Australian one too that does that.
Yeah.
I
think. Yeah. So yeah.
Kind of makes sense. Maybe it's just could be convergence just for the same reason.
Could be. Yeah.
Could be.
So yeah, more study needs to be done.
Yeah, it's interesting. It would be fun to document that if you're able to catch it. It's probably not going to happen in captivity, because we need it because we give them a moisture gradient and whatnot. But
exactly.
And also we probably don't provide suitable conditions atmospherically, climatically, air movement that would be conducive to that actually happening.
Exactly. Yeah, it'd be very hard to document in captivity, but maybe someone in the wild can document it one day. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, does anybody have any other questions about Piedish beetles? We're closing in on our last couple of minutes here. I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to ask other questions. I'm sure I missed some as we were going along. So, anybody else? Well, is there anything else you would like to say, Tristan, about Piedish beetles or about Harvestmen as far as that goes?
I think I covered most of the bases. I will say I didn't really describe my. I didn't describe the the Piedish beetle husbandry as in depth as I did the Harvestmen. I will say that for diet, I feed mine pretty much exclusively dog food, and that's all they need. They've been growing. They grow very fast. Larvae of Piedish beetles only take around 3 months to mature, which is pretty fast for a desert darkling. And when they do mature, they're pretty communal. I would say like up to 20, maybe 30 per gallon as far as adults go is perfectly fine. The lifespan of adults, 1 to 2 years is the average.
Okay.
3 years has been required. I think your Piedish beetle is coming up on 3 years, isn't it?
I need to look it up. It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
Yeah. It's I know that Peter sent it to me when I was going to do an expo, and it wasn't last year. So I at least had it the October before this last October.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an adult when I got it.
Yeah.
So it's been around a while. For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty long lived. Not as long lived as like death fainters, but
right.
Still a year or two is long for a beetle.
Still, yeah, pretty decent.
Yeah, exactly. So,
All
but
right.
yeah, they're very easy. They're prolific, hardy, and I think they're really neat. Even though they're not huge, they have very neat morphology and very active. So they're fun to keep.
I was just absolutely fascinated when I opened the package from Peter and looked at that
Mhm.
beetle. I just thought, that is the trippiest thing I've ever seen.
Why are you shaped like this?
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah.
And I think that every time I look at it. So it's
it's like a walking piece of weird abstract art.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, there's an interesting idea. Molly content. If you put a water drop on his back, would he do that tilting behavior and funnel it? I've never tried it.
I have never tried that either.
Worth a shot.
Let's see. If I can get a singular water drop. That's difficult. Got my mister here. Let's just see if I can drop. Okay. I got water on that one. Nah, I just kind of They might be too kind of stressed in this environment to actually exhibit that behavior, but that
could be
something I might try.
Yeah, it's worth some experimentation.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, it looks like we're about running out of time, but
alrighty.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming and for sharing your expertise and your critters with us.
Thank you for having me. It's always fun.
Yeah. And love to have you back again in the future. There's so much more to talk about.
Yes, definitely.
Species of invertebrate, and we probably only talked about them. So.
Yep. So yeah, anytime.
Great. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining in, and thanks again, Tristan, for coming. And we'll catch y'all later.
All right. Bye. See ya.
See ya.